Chapter 5289. Young Master, what is Miss Guo like? Guelu was a little confused. Is it food or toys? Mu Shanji didn't care much about it, and said casually, you can prepare whatever you want. Food or toys are fine, as long as it's a gift. So, Guelu could only continue to be troubled. Mu Shanji didn't want to waste time on this kind of thing, so he continued to read. When Mu Shanji's mother came and saw Mu Shanji reading seriously, she sighed. Ah, Shan, you like to read so much. Do you feel wrong because you married into the family Tang and lost the chance to pass the exam? Mother, how can you say that? It's good to marry into the family Tang. Mu Shanji's mother shook her head but didn't say anything else. She knew that Mu Shanji liked to read, and he once wanted to pass the exam, but she couldn't let Mu Shanji take that path. When her master handed Ashan to her, he said that unless they found him, Ashan would never be allowed to return to that whirlpool. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. If Ashan passed the exam, he would be exposed to some people, and he would lose his life. Now, they could only endure. If that day didn't come, Ashan would be the son-in-law of the family Tang, and his life wouldn't be bad. If that day came, Ashan would be able to endure it. How's the Xie family? Mu Shanji's mother changed the topic. Last time, she secretly spread the news that the Xie family found the blood doll because she wanted to remind the direct descendants of the Xie family. She thought that they would pay attention to this matter when they heard the news. She asked this because she wanted to know about the situation of the direct descendants of the Xie family. If something happened, Mu Shanji would definitely tell her. After some talkative servants spread the news that the Xie family found the blood doll, it attracted many people who knew the art of medicine. They were very interested in the curse of the blood doll, but they didn't know how to do it, so they left in the end. But a few days ago, a white-haired old man in white clothes came. It seems that he has some skills. He said that he can break the curse. He has already lived in the Xie family for 2 days. We can only wait a few more days to see if he can break the curse. Mu Shanji's mother didn't know what the curse was about. She thought that someone really did something to the Xie family. Hearing that someone was able to break the curse, he heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. At the same time, Su Fengyan also learned that a white-haired old man in white had moved into the Xie family. It was said that he could break the curse of the blood doll. She didn't mind. So many people had come before, but none of them had been able to break the blood doll's curse. In this world, there were only a few people like the one she had met. However, for the sake of safety, she still wrote a letter and asked someone to deliver it to a place very far away. It was the place where the expert lived. All these years, although that expert did not help her, she would often send some useful things to him, and he did not refuse. After all, he had given her some useful things over the past few decades. She was just reminding the expert that someone wanted to break his blood doll curse. On the 3rd day, Tanguo finally understood the curse of the blood doll. Then, she started to break the curse. After a series of operations, every blood doll returned to its original wooden color. She also erased the strange carvings on its body. With her divine sense, she could see that there was a black smoke coming out of the blood dolls' heads. At the same time, the Xie family's luck that was constantly flowing out was cut off somewhere. It no longer floated away. Instead, the black smoke was dispersing everywhere. Chapter 5290. As for where to scatter them, of course, it was to those who had taken over the Xie family's fate. She did not know what would happen in the future, but nothing good would happen. In the end, she burned all the blood dolls to completely end this cruel curse. Taoist priest, has the curse on the Xie family been broken? Master Bai stepped out of the courtyard and was surrounded by the Xie family members. A hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. How did these people know? But thinking of his identity, he pretended to be profound and nodded. You all know? Just a while ago, I had an indescribable feeling. It was as if the huge rock pressing down on me suddenly disappeared. Before this, I always felt that the sun in the house was not warm enough. Now that I feel a different sun, my whole body feels relaxed, old Madame Xie said, so I brought people here. I didn't expect Master Bai to come out. I guess the curse has been broken. Yes, it has been broken. Don't worry. The Xie family will not be troubled by the curse in the future. Master Bai said, unfortunately, it has already happened. This matter was discovered too late. A hint of hatred flashed across old Madame Xie's eyes. Yes, it was really too late. Master Bai, the person who cast the curse, Master Bai said with a smile, the person who cast the curse has already suffered a backlash. If I'm not wrong, his body is already rotten and he's dead. As for those who stole the Xie family's fate for their own use and defied the heavens to change their fate, they will not have an easy time in the future. Without the support of the Xie family's fate, their fate will return to its original state, or even more miserable than before. What will happen? You just have to wait and see. Of course, this was what Tangwa said. Master Bai was just passing on the message. Old Madame Xie felt refreshed when she heard this. In this way, she could vent the anger in her heart. Whether it was Su Fengyan who did it or not depended on what the other party would do next. She still had to take care of her old bones. If the direct descendants of the Xie family really harmed the Xie family, she would personally witness what would happen to them. Old Madame Xie's eyes turned red when she thought of how she had sent away her family members one by one in the past few decades. After the curse of the Xie family came to an end, Master Bai was assigned a task by Tangwa to go to the capital to approach the Empress. She didn't care if the Empress was a good person or a bad person. As long as the Empress was against the Xie family, Imperial concubine Xie, then they were friends. Elder Bai went over to treat the Empress's illness. Naturally, the Xie family would suffer. She guessed that Su Fengyan didn't do anything to the Empress like the Xie family. At most, Imperial consort Xie used some dirty tricks. Otherwise, how could an ordinary Empress suppress Imperial concubine Xie for so many years without daring to breathe? She could only make a big move after she died. He didn't even dare to raise his own son by his side. You don't have to cure the Empress' illness completely. You just have to keep her alive for now. Tangwa said to Master Bai, I suspect that the person who killed the family was arranged by the Empress. Pay attention to this matter. If it was arranged by the Empress, only help her to keep her alive. When she kills Imperial concubine Xie, let both of them suffer. If you see a suitable person, help this person to reap the benefits. Neither of them will benefit. Master Bai said, Master, I feel that my task is getting heavier and heavier. This is because you are more capable. I trust you, Tangwa praised. Chapter 5291. Master Bai didn't really like it, but he still nodded subconsciously. You should show more of your ability to coax the Emperor and become the state preceptor. Then, you can control the situation, right? Don't you like to build fairyland-like pavilions on the island? All of these require money. If you do well for the Emperor, you can take charge of the world. When you live in seclusion in the future, the Emperor will definitely arrange for people to build you a house. You can have whatever house you want. Don't you feel comfortable? Master Bai's eyes lit up. Although he could make money, those exquisite and luxurious decorations couldn't be earned in a short period of time. Some treasures couldn't be bought with money. It required luck. It was said that there were many rare treasures in the palace. Master, I'll go now. Master Bai took the few books that Tangwa gave him and rushed in the direction of the capital. He hired a carriage and finished reading the books in the carriage. These books were about the art of divination. Although they couldn't topple mountains and overturn seas, they were enough to predict the situation. As the state preceptor, knowing these should be a basic ability. Back at the Xie family's old residence, Su Fengyan hadn't returned to the capital yet. She planned to stay here for a while and wait for the expert's letter. She had heard that the Xie family had broken the curse of the blood doll. However, she didn't see any difference. She thought that the white-haired old man in white was a swindler who came to cheat the Xie family of their money. The money was gone, and so was the person. In fact, the curse was not broken. However, she still felt uneasy. She wouldn't leave until she got a reply from the expert. After about 10 days, the person she sent to deliver the letter finally came back. How is it? The guard didn't know the details because Su Fengyan was delivering the letter to an old friend. Therefore, even if he saw something unusual in the past, he didn't think it was a big deal. Therefore, Su Fengyan didn't find anything unusual from the guard's face. Madam, when the letter was delivered, something had happened there. The owner of the thatched cottage passed away the day before. Su Fengyan was stunned and looked nervous. Passed away? How could it be? That was an expert. an expert who could defy the heavens and change one's fate. How could he pass away? In her opinion, since the old man could change fate, he must be able to change his own fate. He shouldn't die. At this time, she still did not realize the seriousness of the matter. Did they die of a strange disease, or was it discovered by a nearby farmer? When this humble one went over, the surroundings of the thatched cottage were filled with a foul stench, and the plants were all withered. I even went to take a look. That person's skin was festering all over, and I didn't know what kind of illness it was. The nearby villagers were afraid of contagious diseases, so they could only cremate him. The thatched huts were also gone. Even the withered plants in the surroundings were burned. Finally, a pit was filled at the spot where he used to be and buried him. The guard answered truthfully. He didn't know that Su Fengyun's heart was in turmoil, and she almost couldn't stand still. If that expert had died of old age, she wouldn't have much of a reaction. At most, she would be in disbelief and shock. She was terrified when she heard about the other party's death. This way of dying sounded very scary. Strange disease. Was it really a strange disease? What kind of strange disease could actually cause the surrounding vegetation to wither and give off an incomparably foul smell? That place had been burned down, so it would be impossible to find anything useful there. Su Fengyun was a little frightened. She felt that it was not safe here, so she planned to bring people back to the capital the next morning. Who knew that when she stepped out of the threshold the next morning, she stepped on something and fell down, and her journey had to be postponed. Paralyzed? Old Madame Xie was surprised. Isn't she very agile? How could she be paralyzed? I heard that she tripped on the threshold and can't move her left side. She can only stay in bed. Now, I've arranged for someone to go to the capital to ask Imperial Concubine, Xie, to invite an Imperial physician. Old Madame Xie's eyes lit up. Could this be the backlash? Tang's two index fingers kept crossing in circles. Her gaze swept across Tang Jian's face. She didn't know when Tang Jian and Mu Shanji would be able to make a fire. Should she give them some space? System. Dear host, your eyes are very strange. I've stayed in the house for so long. I want to go out for a walk. Tangwa didn't answer the system. Instead, she said, I'll go back to find father tomorrow. I want to enjoy the sea breeze and see the sea. System. Is that so? Why didn't he believe it? Did he think that little Tongzi was easy to fool? Chapter 5292. Old Madame Xie was very reluctant to let Tangwa leave the Xie family. However, she knew that she couldn't let Tangwa stay at home forever. After returning to the mansion, Tangwa stayed there for 2 days. She wanted to go to the sea and take a boat, but she didn't succeed. Tangwa was speechless. Minister Tang was worried. The Xie family's young master had an accident not long ago, and it was in the river. He was afraid that he couldn't control the risk in the sea, so he didn't allow Tangwa to take a boat to the sea. After much persuasion, he only agreed to let her watch the sea from the shore. She couldn't think about going into the sea. The system comforted Tangwa. Tangwa said, I forgot that as a fool. How can my family let me go to the sea? If I'm a normal person, this matter will be much easier. Since Minister Tang objected to her taking a boat to the sea, Tangwa could only give up the idea. She followed Minister Tang's arrangement and played by the sea for a while. She didn't need to go out to the sea. She could play on the shore. Minister Tang could arrange more people to accompany Tangwa. As for Mu Shanji, he could take care of the family business. When Mu Shanji heard that Tangwa wanted to play by the sea, he was immediately happy. Then you should arrange more people to take care of Guo and guards. Of course, I've arranged all these. Shanji, take care of the family business during this period. When you're not so busy, you can play with Guo next time. It was rare for Minister Tang to have such an opportunity. Of course, he didn't want to miss it. Since he handed over the family business to Mu Shanji, he had more time to accompany his daughter and make up for the regrets in the past. Mu Shanji didn't feel uncomfortable at all that he didn't need to accompany Tangwa. Instead, he was very happy. If he didn't have to stay with Tangwa, then he wouldn't stay with her. Otherwise, he would feel that he was doing something wrong to Tang Jian. After Tangwa and Minister Tang left, Mu Shanji felt that the air in the mansion was fresher. It was as if the burden on his body was lifted. Without Counselor Tang by his side, he went to Qingfeng County more diligently. After he went there, he was not as rushed as before. He had to go back the next day. He could stay there for a while longer and meet up with Tang Jian more often. Every time Tang Jian talked to him about the Xie family, Mu Shanji would habitually ask about what had happened to the Xie family after seeing her. Tang Jian said, "Ever since the old lady of the Xie family fell and became paralyzed, she has been in a good mood every day. Why did I hear that someone came from the capital? Was it someone sent by the Xie family to pick up the old madam?" The direct descendants of the Xie clan were such a big clan. Even the slightest movement would cause an uproar. In any case, the Xie clan had produced an imperial concubine, so her status was not ordinary. She was picked up early this morning. I heard that when she went out, she even knocked the old lady down and knocked her front teeth out. Originally, they planned to stay for 2 days, but the old lady waved her hand and asked everyone to hurry up, as if there was a demon in the old house. I think the old madam might have something to do with the blood doll. This must be the backlash that Elderby mentioned. Chapter 5293. Previously, Tang Jian was skeptical about the backfire. Now that the old madams of the Xie family had accidents one after another, she had no choice but to believe it. Outsiders didn't know that the blood doll might be related to her. But Tang Jian had heard the old madam say it herself, so she had to make this guess. Mu Shanji chimed in. That means that Elder Bai is really a master. Speaking of this, the two suddenly fell silent. Without Tangwa in the middle, they were much more free to meet each other. Mu Shanji was not used to Tang Jian's sudden silence. How have you been in the Xie family recently? Very good. The old madam is very good to me. She left all the big and small matters in the family to me. I'm also gradually managing the Xie family's business. She doesn't avoid me. Speaking of this, Tang Jian suddenly raised her head. By the way, the old madam is going to hold a funeral for the young master next month. It had been so long, but they still hadn't found him. The old madam was sure that Xierong was dead. Su Fengyun also suffered from the backfire. The old madam couldn't help but hold a funeral for Xierong. She only wanted to be lucky in her heart, even if she really didn't want to. Mu Shanji didn't have any opinion on this matter. He only felt that it was normal. The old madam also told me that after a year of mulberry, if I have someone I like, I can marry or find a husband. I won't be a widow in the Xie family. Tang Jian continued. Speaking of which, the people of the Xie family are not bad. In fact, she didn't need these. Except for Mu Shanji, she didn't have anyone else she liked, and she wouldn't be tempted by anyone. The old madam also said that if I trust her, she can help me find a good person. The young master's departure was a big blow to the old madam. She doesn't even care about the wealth of the family. I think the only thing that keeps her alive now is to wait for someone to suffer from the backfire. Mu Shanji was a little anxious. You agree? You want to marry? Or find a husband? Tang Jian rolled her eyes at Mu Shanji. What does this have to do with you? I won't allow it. Tang Jian didn't expect Mu Shanji to suddenly hug her and forcefully forbid her from marrying or finding a husband. Then, he kissed her hard. It was a false start, but Tang Jian did not struggle. She was thinking that if Mu Shanji had been so powerful in the beginning, they wouldn't have ended up like this. After a while, Mu Shanji let go of Tang Jian and said seriously, Jian, don't fall for anyone else. I don't like anyone else. Can you give me a good ending? Tang Jian pushed Mu Shanji away and left. Mu Shanji couldn't answer that question. He could only watch her leave. After she left for a long time, he slapped himself hard. He hated himself for being so useless that he couldn't be with the girl he loved. Why did he leave at that time? If he had directly said that he had a sweetheart, he wouldn't be like this with Jian today, right? It would be great if he could go back to the past. After this incident, the two of them did not meet for many days. Tang Jian was annoyed that Mu Shanji was obviously infatuated with her, but he couldn't give her a result. He even told her not to fall in love with anyone else. Of course, she didn't want to see him. Mu Shanji also calmed down for a few days before he came to Qingfeng County again. However, he heard a rumor here. It was old Madame Xie who said that after a year, Tang Jian could marry on her own and she wouldn't interfere. Chapter 5294. Why did she say that? She was just following Xierong's previous idea. This way, Tang Jian would not be looked down upon and said that she was restless in the future. Mr. Xie is really a good person. It's a pity that he didn't live long. It's all because of the blood doll's curse. Otherwise, the Xie family wouldn't be so lonely. Do you think the young madam of the Xie family is lucky or unlucky? The last question really stumped many people. She was lucky, but she lost her husband early and became a widow. The young master of the Xie family was so good. She was unlucky, but the young master of the Xie family had already left his last words. It was indeed a blessing for her that she was not imprisoned in the Xie family for the rest of her life. Guelu, do you think Jian will fall in love with someone else? Mu Shanji was a little stunned when he heard everyone's discussion. If she likes someone else and wants to get married, I still have no right to stop her. Guelu didn't know how to comfort him. They were clearly in love, but they couldn't be together. It was heartbreaking to see them. Miss Guo was really not suitable for the young master. The young master was sad and distressed here, but she went to the beach to play. It was because she was a fool. How could she know the young master's emotions? How could she understand and accompany him? He couldn't persuade the young master to divorce because the young master was marrying into the family. He didn't even have the right to divorce. It was only Minister Tang who was dissatisfied with him and divorced him. Once he had such a reputation, he would never be able to clear it for the rest of his life. Guelu felt that his young master was really unlucky. Why did he have to deal with such an unlucky thing? Guelu couldn't answer, so Mu Shanji didn't ask anymore. He originally wanted to find Tang Jian, but now he didn't want to. It seemed that he couldn't do anything if he went. He went back in a daze. He couldn't sleep day and night, so he fell sick. After not seeing him for half a month, Tang Jian finally couldn't sit still. Before she could ask someone to find out the news, Guelu came to see her. You finally appeared. Where's your young master? Tang Jian was still a little angry. I just joked that day. Did he really not come to see me? Thinking of this, Tang Jian was so angry that her eyes turned red. Guelu hurriedly explained, it's not that young master doesn't want to come. It's that young master is sick and has been sick for a few days. I know that young master misses you, so I took the risk and secretly came to see you to inform you of this matter. Hearing that Mu Shanji was sick, Tang Jian forgot everything and was no longer angry. She quickly asked what was going on. That day, young master asked me if Miss Jian would fall in love with someone else. After that, he didn't look too good. After returning home, he fell sick not long after. Chapter 5295. Old Madame Xie did not care about these things now. As long as the people who harmed the Xie family received retribution, she would be at peace for the rest of her life. As for what would happen to Tang Jian in the future, she had already done according to Arong's idea. She believed that Arong would be happy to know this. Seas and seas. The Xie family was not a good place. Why did she have to harm them? Tang Jian saw that old Madame Xie did not care about these things and felt relieved. The next day, she brought some guards and Qingyang back to Wuxin County. She left Hongyang here to keep an eye on them. Perhaps she had a guilty conscience. She also told old Madame Xie during breakfast that she might stay for a few days. Old Madame Xie nodded and smiled. Of course, if the person you care about is still alive, you should spend more time with him. Otherwise, you will regret it when he is gone. Tang Jian understood that old Madame Xie did not have any doubts because she told her about her own experience. She felt that old Madame Xie was indeed very pitiful. She had lost a family member. Although she was pitiful, she did have to go back to see Mu Shanji. She would not be at ease if she did not go back. When she returned to the mansion, Mu Shanji was indeed sick and bedridden. She used the excuse of waiting for Minister Tang and Tangwa to return and stayed in the mansion for a few more days. Previously, Minister Tang had said that her courtyard had been kept, and she could come back to stay at any time. The people in the mansion did not find it strange. The people around Mu Shanji were replaced by her own people, so it was more convenient for the two of them to meet. In fact, as soon as Tang Jian went, his illness was mostly cured. Tangwa, who was playing outside, knew about the movements in the mansion. Seeing that the relationship between the two of them had been warming up, she was in a good mood. The two of them were no longer limited to talking. Often, as they talked, they could not control their actions. She knew that they would not be able to control themselves soon. Originally, Minister Tang had planned to go back, but how could Tangwa allow it? She insisted that she wanted to play. Minister Tang had no choice but to stay for a while and accompany Tangwa to pick up shells and stones every day. It was boring and interesting. She was very conflicted. It was not until the two of them finally could not control themselves and did something that should not have happened. In the next few days, they could not control themselves every day and would find opportunities to do such things. Tangwa was finally satisfied. A single man and woman, dry wood and blazing fire. I knew that this would happen sooner or later. How's Elderby doing? That's fine. The situation will be over soon. 2 days later, Squire Tang said that he wanted to go back. This time, Tangwa didn't continue to play with him. Squire Tang couldn't help but secretly wipe his sweat. What he didn't know was that something that shouldn't have happened between Mu Shanji and Tang Jian. The two of them felt that it was the most wonderful thing in their lives. They couldn't get enough of it. They always looked for opportunities to get closer to each other and threw all their worries to the back of their minds. It was not until Squire Tang and Tangwa returned home that their short and beautiful dream was broken. When they saw Tangwa and Squire Tang, they both felt guilty about what had happened before and spoke absent-mindedly. It's League of Legends. Jian is here? Squire Tang was both surprised and happy. Since you're back, you should stay here for a while. Even if you're married, this will always be your home. Even if he had nothing to do, he would stay in the study and occasionally read late at night. Previously, he had thought that Mu Shanji was hardworking, but now that he thought about it, something seemed wrong. Of course, Tangwa deliberately let Minister Tang feel these things. When Mu Shanji was not with her, she would come to pester Minister Tang to play with him. That was how he found out. According to the original plot, basically wherever Mu Shanji went, the original owner would follow. Thus, Officer Tang wouldn't notice the problem. When Tangwa came to play kite with Officer Tang called her to him. He didn't immediately agree to go out, but just patted her head. Gwar, why do you always let Daddy play kite with you? Didn't you like to play with your brother Shanji? Officer Tang was shocked. He seemed to have neglected too many things. Something was wrong. Isn't Brother Shanji very busy? Tangwa asked in confusion. Brother Shanji said that if he didn't complete the tasks set by Daddy, he would be scolded by Daddy. So, he has to work hard to complete them. He doesn't have time to play with me. System, Mu Shanji, you played. Officer Tang's smile disappeared. Although he had given Mu Shanji many tasks, he never thought that he could sacrifice the time he spent with his daughter to complete them. Was Mu Shanji using him as an excuse? Gwar, do you want to play with your brother Shanji? Officer Tang asked. Tangwa said, I want to play with Daddy. Why? Officer Tang was surprised. His daughter didn't pester Mu Shanji anymore. What was going on? The Peak. Chapter 5297. As an idiot, she might not be able to tell the specific reason why she didn't like to play with someone. But one thing was for sure, the idiot didn't want to play with that person. Her enthusiasm and fondness for that person gradually disappeared. Tangwa guessed the reaction of an idiot in her heart. She looked a little confused and looked at Minister Tang. Her eyes were still clear, and there was no trace of distracting thoughts. I don't want to play with Brother Shanji. She didn't need to give a very special reason. She just directly expressed her dislike. Minister Tang was really surprised by this answer. She didn't like to play with Mu Shanji? He wanted to ask why she didn't like to play with him, but then he remembered Tangwa's situation and quickly stopped. Gua-er's intelligence was originally different from ordinary people. She was like a 3-year-old child. If he asked her to tell the truth, wouldn't he be making things difficult for her? He thought about it carefully. Tangwa indeed didn't take the initiative to play with Mu Shanji for a long time. She didn't pester him like before. Gua-er, did Mu Shanji bully you? Minister Tang couldn't sit still. No matter what, he must find out something specific today. Because his daughter was different from ordinary people, he neglected a lot of things. He was really not qualified to be a biological father. What is bullying? He made Gua-er unhappy. That's bullying. Minister Tang spoke directly. When talking to his daughter, the more direct the better. He couldn't be subtle, otherwise, she wouldn't understand. After asking this question, he waited for Tangwa's answer. Brother Shanji likes to play with cousin. After a while, Tangwa said something that surprised Minister Tang. A person with abnormal intelligence might not realize what was wrong, but a normal person couldn't help but think more. Even if Mu Shanji and Tang Jiyin were somewhat familiar with each other, because of their identities, they couldn't play together at all. After all, they weren't children. Tangwa said these things, but they were only in the original plot. In this life, because she didn't want to see these two lovey-dovey in front of her, the two found a chance to go out for a rendezvous. But occasionally, when she was in a bad mood, she would go and cause trouble, making the two uncomfortable. Most of the time, Mu Shanji was tortured. Speaking of which, Mu Shanji was too much of a scumbag. Why is Shanji playing with Jian? Minister Tang continued to ask. He was already suspicious of the two. Now that he thought about it, Mu Shanji liked to go to Qingfeng County the most. At first, his excuse was to visit Guo. However, from Guo's words, it was obvious that he did not care about Guo that much. Otherwise, Guo would not have said that she did not want to play with Mu Shanji. Most likely, it was because Mu Shanji was not sincere and did not like Guo. It was also because Guo did not like to play with him. Brother Shanji likes to talk to his cousin. Cousin asked the maid to play with me. As Tangwa's last two sentences fell, Squire Tang's expression changed greatly. It was clearly two simple sentences, but he heard a different meaning. This was also something that happened in the storyline. When the two of them were talking, they didn't like having outsiders around. Thus, they asked their confidants to coax the original owner out to play. The original owner wasn't a normal person, but she wouldn't be happy. But she cared a lot about Mu Shanji because Mu Shanji's past gave her a different feeling. If he didn't laugh at her, he would be a fool and helped her drive away those children who laughed at her. The few occasional acts of kindness were engraved in the heart of the original owner. The world of fools was so simple. They would always remember your kindness. Chapter 5298. Minister Tang didn't ask anything else. He called Han Er in and asked her a lot of questions. Han Er had been by Tangwa's side the whole time. Of course, she didn't know about Mu Shanji and Tang Jiyin. Minister Tang didn't blame her. After all, those two were her masters. It was easy for them to send Han Er away. Even he was kept in the dark, let alone someone like Han Er who served Guo closely. You may leave. Serve Miss well. Don't tell anyone about what happened today. Yes, Minister. Han Er didn't know what happened. Minister Tang didn't ask clearly, but her intuition told her that something big was going to happen. Her responsibility was to take care of Mississippi whatever happened. It was not something she could control. After Han Er took Tangwa away, Minister Tang immediately called two of his trusted subordinates to the study. No one would pay attention to this. No one knew that a group of people secretly went to Qingfeng County to find out what Mu Shanji was doing. Minister Tang was a kind person. He felt that as long as he did more good deeds, his daughter would be happy for the rest of her life. However, he wasn't a simple person. He could tell the difference between good and bad. Especially if someone didn't treat his daughter well, he wouldn't let them go. He felt suffocated when he thought about the truth. One of them was his niece who he watched grow up. He took good care of her and basically treated her like his own daughter. The other one was his son-in-law. He thought that he had a good eye for people. Now, he was told that the two of them might have done something wrong to Guo. If this was true, he couldn't allow Guo to spend the rest of her life with such people. Even if he raised her for the rest of her life, he didn't want anyone to make her unhappy. Dear host, your father is really awesome. The people he sent over are all watching Mu Shanji. Although these people only know some basic martial arts, they are definitely good at investigating. Then let's wait and see. Those two won't disappoint my father. He'll probably be furious. Your father treated Tang Jiyin with sincerity, and Mu Shanji owes him a great debt of gratitude. These two people. Can love really destroy a person's morals? You're a single dog system. Why are you so emotional? Did you take a fancy to the system in the establishment and want to pursue her? Dear host, what you're saying is incredible. I still prefer to be single. What's so good about dating? Look, someone is still on the island and can't get out. This is the result of falling in love. As long as Mu Shanji was in Qingfeng County, He would meet Tangjian every day. Sometimes, when they had plenty of time and were free and had the opportunity, they would do some indescribable things. The two of them were so engrossed in it that they had long forgotten their identities and the troubles of the outside world. Chapter 5299. Guo I don't think Mu Shanji is a good person. What do you think about letting him move out? Minister Tang was very sad about this matter. At this time, he was actually glad that his daughter was a fool and didn't understand these things. If she didn't understand these things, she wouldn't be hurt. If she was a normal person, she would be very sad. Move out? Yes, I want him to move out. Guo doesn't like to play with him, and he doesn't like to play with Guo. How can he stay in my mansion? Let him move out. I'll play with you in the future. I'll play with you. You can invite whoever you like to our house. Under Minister Tang's nervous expression, Tang Guo agreed with a smile. She didn't feel reluctant at all. Minister Tang felt relieved. I have to go out tomorrow. Guo you can stay at home alone for the time being, okay? Of course, Tang Guo agreed. Although she wanted to see the scene, Minister Tang didn't want her to see it. He didn't want her to get hurt, so she could only let it go. Moreover, she had the system to help her. She could just close her eyes and watch the live broadcast. Minister Tang wasn't a simple person. He had some tricks up his sleeve, but he didn't usually use them. It was Tang Jian and Mu Shanji who made him angry. He did these things quietly and no one noticed. The next day, Minister Tang secretly went to Qingfeng County. He even disguised himself for this. He didn't inform old Madame Xia. It was very embarrassing. If he didn't have to tell her, he really didn't want to. However, he would tell her eventually. At that time, he would divorce Mu Shanji and kick him out of the mansion. What he didn't know was that Xierong, who was trapped on the island, was finally told by a maid that he had recovered and could leave. If he could leave, he called CG and ran to the seaside. There was a boat there. The two quickly boarded the boat. He didn't want to take any of the specialties on the island. He was afraid that if he stayed any longer, the strange white-haired old man would go back on his words and make him stay here. After about 2 days and 1 night, Xierong finally saw the coast. He was very excited when he saw that there were no other people on the island. But when he thought about how he had been missing for several months, he didn't know if his family was safe. His grandmother's body was strong and healthy, but after suffering the blow of his disappearance, he didn't know if there would be any changes. Before he returned home, he felt very uneasy. Returning to the shore, he bid farewell to the people on the island, hired a carriage, and rushed back home. It would only take a few hours to get back. Just after noon, the carriage arrived at the Xia residence. Xierong, whose face was not as pale as before, jumped down from the carriage, giving 4 seasons of fright. Young master, be careful. Be careful not to break it. It's fine. You're too nervous. Your young master isn't made of eggshells. How could it be broken from a single fall? He had already recovered from his illness. He had been recovering well from the medicine he had taken at the beginning, but the recovery was a little slow. Then, one day, for some unknown reason, they took the same medicine, but all the symptoms on that day suddenly disappeared. The people on the island felt that it was very magical. Later, they took the medicine for a few days and found that there was no problem, so they stopped taking the medicine. His body was very good now. He felt that it was better than the average person's body. He had endless strength. He felt that he could knock out CG with 1 punch. CG felt a chill on his back and quickly followed Xierong in. Chapter 5300. The gatekeeper heard someone knocking on the door. When he opened it, he saw a slender young man with clear eyes and a rosy face. He subconsciously greeted him. May I ask who young master is? What business do you have with the Xie family? Are you blind? You don't even recognize young master? When 4 Seasons heard this, he was a little angry. He raised his voice. Open your eyes wide and take a good look. You're not new here. You've been here for more than 10 years. It's only been a few months, and you don't even recognize young master? 4 Seasons was very angry. Was this guy getting old? His eyesight was not good. Young master? The gatekeeper was stunned. He looked at Xierong and quickly rubbed his eyes. He felt that the young master in front of him was a little familiar, but he looked energetic. A while ago, the Xie family helped with the young master's funeral, so he did not think of this. After 4 seasons said this, the more he looked at Xierong, the more he recognized that this person was his young master. Young master, are you really young master? Young master, where did you go? The gatekeeper's eyes reddened. Young master, we've been looking for you. You're still alive. That's great. The gatekeeper thought of something. He turned and ran, shouting loudly, Old madam, good news. There's great news. Xierong could feel the gatekeeper's excitement. Actually, he was very excited too. When he heard the gatekeeper call Old Madam Xie, he really relaxed. The other party called Grandma, which meant that Grandma was still alive. Even if she was sick because of his disappearance, now that he was back, Grandma would definitely recover. He quickly followed. 4 seasons closed the door and quickly followed. When Xierong returned home, everyone in the Xie family was very excited. Old Madame Xie directly closed the residence. She pulled Xierong, crying and laughing. She kept saying that the heavens protected the Xie family and protected the only person she cared about. She did not ask for anything from the Xie family. As long as Xierong could live well, it was more important than anything. After losing so many family members, she was indifferent to everything. Grandma, I've made you worry. The island master is a strange person. I can't leave the island because of my illness. The island master is our Xie family's great benefactor. Arong, you have to thank him in the future. I know. Old Madame Xie recalled what had happened during this period of time and told him everything. When Xierong heard about the blood doll's curse and how the curse was broken, he calculated the time and realized how his illness had been cured in such a short time. What the two of them didn't know was that Tang Jian was having a rendezvous in the house that Mu Shanji had bought. Being intimate during the day was already the norm for the two of them. After all, they didn't have the chance to meet at night, so it would be easy to be exposed. During the day, the two of them were surrounded by trusted people and could find all sorts of excuses to meet. At this moment, a group of mysterious people appeared outside the house and tied up everyone around the two of them. Because some of Counselor Tang's men had sneaked in as cooks, they added something to their lunch, which made them sleepy. After they tied him up, Squire Tang was led to the room where Tang Jian and Mu Shanji met. While the two of them were in the middle of it, the room door was pushed open with a bang. The sudden noise scared the two of them out of their wits, and they hurriedly wrapped the blanket around their bodies. Squire Tang stood in front of them with his men, his eyes cold. Chapter 5301. The moment Tang Jian saw Squire Tang, her head exploded. She was so scared that she fainted. Mu Shanji's face was pale, and his whole body was trembling. He wrapped the quilt tightly and forgot that Tang Jian's body was gradually exposed. His lips moved as if he had lost the ability to speak. He could only look at Squire Tang. Mu Shanji, I've been good to you. How can you do this to me? If you don't want Guo'er, I won't force you. Since you've chosen to marry into my family, you should know what to do and what not to do. I, Tang Yuanqing, am not harsh to others and have given you enough face. I even considered whether you have an heir or not. Is this how you treat me and my daughter? Mu Shanji couldn't speak. He didn't know what to say. He just lowered his head dejectedly, like a rooster who had lost a fight. He felt aggrieved in his heart, but he couldn't say anything even if he was asked to. Squire Tang's words were heart-wrenching, and he couldn't refute them. Squire Tang said, "Wake him up and tie him up. Let's go to the Xie family." The Xie family was in a happy and harmonious atmosphere. "Madam, young master, there's a guest," the gatekeeper reported. Madame Xie said, "We won't see any guests today. Go back and tell them to spread the news about young master later." "Madam, it's Squire Tang and—" The gatekeeper hesitated for a moment and said, "Squire Tang said there's something important. I also saw 2 people tied up. Unfortunately, their heads were covered with a cloth. I don't know who they are. Maybe it's something serious. Maybe some disobedient servants in the mansion did something wrong and were caught by Squire Tang. He covered their heads with a cloth to show respect to Madam." Except for this, the gatekeeper couldn't think of anything else. Otherwise, Why would they cover their heads with a cloth? Since it was Squire Tang, no matter what his purpose was, Madame Xie didn't know. After all, the two families were relatives by marriage. When Squire Tang came in, Madame Xie and Xierong were very surprised. Why did Squire Tang have such a big entourage today? There were quite a few people with them, and two of them were tied up. Just as the gatekeeper had said, their heads were covered, so it was impossible to tell who they were. Old madam, I'm here this time. Minister Tang suddenly saw Xierong sitting next to old Madame Xie. He was stunned. Xierong? Xierong stood up and cupped his hands. Squire Tang, are you okay? Minister Tang was a little shocked. After recovering from his shock, he nodded. It's good that you're fine. It's a pity that I'm here to spoil your mood today. This matter has to be dealt with. Speaking of which, my family Tang is in the wrong. Old madam, it's better to let the irrelevant people leave first. This matter is not ordinary. Catching an adulterer was one thing, but it was still a scandal. Squire Tang didn't want everyone to know about it, so he decided to deal with it internally. If the people outside knew about it, they wouldn't be laughing at his daughter. The people around him retreated, leaving only a few of his confidants behind. Minister Tang then asked someone to remove the cloth, revealing Mu Shanji and Tang Jian's faces. Old Madame Xie and Xierong were a little confused. When they saw the two of them looking dejected and their hair was a little messy, they had a bad feeling in their hearts. Xierong didn't feel anything special. After all, he had no feelings for Tang Jian at all. He subconsciously looked at old Madame Xie and found that old Madame Xie was calm enough. She might have thought of something, but she wasn't as angry as he imagined. However, old Madame Xie's eyes gradually showed some disgust. She hurriedly glanced at Tang Jian, and her gaze fell on Xierong's face. Although her grandson had been cuckolded, as long as he was alive, it was better than anything else. She had experienced all kinds of storms. This was nothing. Minister Tang, you can deal with it as you see fit. After old Madame Xie said this, she still asked Xierong, Rong, Grandma has decided to send Tang Jian back to the family Tang. Do you have any objections? Xierong, of course, I have no objections. Previously, he was still wondering if he had shot himself in the foot and how to deal with his relationship with Tang Jian. After thinking about it, he decided to discuss with the other party what to do next. He didn't expect the other party to be more anxious. Chapter 5302. Both old Madame Xie and Xierong faced this matter calmly, which surprised Minister Tang. But when he thought of how much old Madame Xie valued Xierong and knew that he was still alive, she was not too angry. At this time, old Madame Xie should feel that it was good that her grandson was back and nothing else was important. According to the procedure, Xierong wrote a letter of divorce and handed it to Tang Jian. Tang Jian was caught red-handed by Minister Yang. She could not quibble even if she wanted to. She could only take the letter of divorce with a pale face. Xierong did not care much about this matter. Instead, he looked at Mu Shanji. He had long guessed that Tang Jian had a sweetheart. At first, he thought that Minister Tang did not agree and married into the Xie family because she was disheartened. Now he understood that her sweetheart was Mu Shanji. It was impossible for the two of them to be together. What he did not expect was that even if it was impossible, the two of them did something immoral and still wanted to be together. He did not know much about the family Tang's affairs and had no right to interfere. But from Minister Tang's attitude, he felt that he would not let his daughter suffer. Mu Shanji probably could not be the son-in-law of the family Tang. Unknowingly, the face he saw on the day of the wedding appeared in his mind. Speaking of which, the fates of the two of them were very similar. One was stupid, the other was sick, and they were both cuckolded. Old Madame Xie, young Master Xie, sorry to disturb your family reunion today. I still have some things to deal with. Goodbye. Old Madame Xie nodded. Take care, Minister Tang. She looked at Tang Jian and finally shook her head. What was wrong with her grandson? Even if he was not infatuated, he still considered everything for Tang Jian and even arranged her escape route. Old Madame Xie was not angry as she looked on the surface. She had been through a lot. Now that her only family member was back alive, nothing bad could wash away the joy in her heart. Therefore, she did not ask Tang Jian why she did this, nor did she look at her fiercely. She did not even intend to say a word to her. Minister Tang ordered people to cover Tang Jiyin and Mu Shanji's heads. The servants dragged the two dispirited people out of the Xie family. It's good that you're back, Arong. Nothing else matters. After watching Squire Tang and the others leave, old Madame Xie patted Xiarong's shoulder. Now that you're in good health, I'll personally find you a girl you like. I really don't know what kind of people will be like when they grow up. This is unacceptable. Although she was not angry, old Madame Xie was still a little scared. If Squire Tang hadn't caught her in time, she wouldn't have thought of that. Tang Jiyin was so busy every day that she did not have the time to care. Who knew that Tang Jiyin would do such a shameful thing? Chapter 5303. Since the day Su Fengyan fell, I felt that she had something to do with it. Rong, you don't have to do anything unnecessary. We'll just sit here and see what happens to Su Fengyun's family. I heard that it wasn't peaceful on her way back to the capital. However, the person who delivered the letter only comes back once every 10 days. It'll take some time for him to get the latest news. When Xiarong heard this, he felt that his grandmother was gloating. He thought to himself that he had to quickly send someone to the capital to keep an eye on her before he could be at ease. Grandmother, I wonder who the master who removed the curse for our Xie family is. Where is he now? This person is called Elder Bai. Elder Bai? Xiarong was shocked. A weird old man with white hair and white clothes, right? Yes. Rong, do you know him? After the two of them described each other, they found out that the person who removed the curse on the island was Elder Bai. The two of them said that the Xie family was very lucky. Minister Tang brought people to escort Tang Jiyin and Mu Shanji back to Wuxin County. The incident between Tang Jiyin and Mu Shanji was more or less a legend in Qingfeng County. However, it hadn't been long since the incident was discovered. He believed that in less than 2 days, Xiarong would return home and the reason behind Tang Jiyin's divorce would spread throughout Qingfeng County. Minister Tang knew that this incident couldn't be kept a secret. If one person knew about it, it wouldn't be a secret. He didn't deliberately block the news. If the two of them dared to do this, they wouldn't be afraid of outsiders talking about it. It took them half a day to return to Wuxin County. Minister Tang immediately gathered everyone in the clan. This was such a big matter, and it would not be easy to resolve it without holding a clan meeting. This was to avoid suspicion from the outside world, and if someone were to bite back at him, he would of course go through all the necessary procedures. Today, I've called all of you here because something very painful and shameful has happened. I need all of you to bear witness to it. Minister Tang told them what happened. Everyone in the clan looked at Tang Jiyin in disbelief. Tang Jiyin's head was removed. She felt the burning pain from those eyes. She felt wronged, sad, and angry. She wanted to find a hole to hide in. Yuan Qing, how do you plan to deal with this matter? They didn't have the custom of drowning people in a pig cage for adultery. At most, they felt that it was embarrassing and the clan might remove the person from the list. Moreover, with their understanding of Minister Tang, he wouldn't be cruel enough to drown Tang Jiyin. Even if the person asking was the uncle of the Tang family, they had to listen to Minister Tang's opinion first. After all, it was Minister Tang who led the Tang family to glory. What's done is done. We've lost face and our reputation, said Squire Tang. The only thing we can do now is to stop our losses. I was blind and made a mistake in choosing such a husband for Guo. So today, in front of everyone in the clan, I want to divorce Mu Shanji and drive him out of my mansion. I'll have to trouble him to return to where he came from. He'll leave the way he came. You're letting him off so easily? This person is restless. How dare he commit adultery? He should be beaten 50 times before being thrown out. That's right. Yuan Qing took care of him so much, but he did such an immoral thing. It's hard to vent my anger without beating him. Chapter 5304. Everyone in the clan agreed to give Mu Shanji a good beating. Minister Tang was also very angry, so he agreed. Mu Shanji was dragged outside in front of the other members of the clan. He was mercilessly beaten 30 times. He didn't get 50 because it would kill him. Not many people could withstand 50 strikes. Tang Jiyin heard Mu Shanji's screams and was so anxious that tears flowed out. She knelt in front of Minister Tang and begged for mercy. Before Counselor Tang could say anything, the people of the clan started talking at once. This is a troublemaker. Jian, are you blind to fall in love with this kind of person? How did such a traitorous and ungrateful person manage to seduce you to the point of being infatuated with him? Have you forgotten what etiquette, justice, integrity, and shame are? Jian, Yuan Qing watched you grow up. After your parents passed away, did you forget how Yuan Qing took care of you and brought you to the minister's mansion? When the minister's mansion was built, he even reserved your father's courtyard and gave it to you. When you got married, Yuan Qing prepared a generous dowry for you and gave you a grand wedding. It was not worse than the dowry of other daughters who had both parents. In fact, it was much better. As for the courtyard you lived in, Yuan Qing still kept it for you. He said that it was your only way out. Jian, how muddle-headed are you to be blinded by this restless brat? What kind of magic potion did he feed you? The words of the clan elder left Tang Jian speechless. She opened her mouth, but no words came out of her mouth to plead for leniency. At this moment, her mind seemed to be much clearer. Yes, when she was a few years old, her parents had an accident and she became an orphan. While she was in a state of panic, eldest uncle rushed to her house and brought her to the minister's mansion, letting her live in the private courtyard with beautiful scenery. There were 2 rooms in the courtyard. It was the old house of the family. Her father lived there when he was young. Her eldest uncle remembered their brotherhood. When he built the new house, he expanded it on the foundation of the old house. It was bigger than the original house and became a spacious courtyard. Every time their family came here, they would stay here. This was enough to prove that her uncle really missed her father as a brother. Later on, she was taken into the minister's manor. Whatever her cousin had, she also had. Eldest uncle did not treat her differently. Eldest uncle had even spent a lot of effort in nurturing her. He hired many teachers for her to teach her the 4 arts. Occasionally, he would bring her along when he went out to see the businesses her father had left behind. He even told her that when she grew up in the future, these businesses would be handed over to her to manage personally. Tang Jian's eyes suddenly turned red. Why did she feel like she was still living under someone else's roof? She clearly knew that Mu Shanji was someone she shouldn't touch, but she still couldn't resist the temptation and insisted on getting together with him. Now, she even made an irreparable mistake. She had embarrassed her parents and herself and betrayed her uncle's trust. He should be very disappointed. She had thought that her clansmen were mocking her for doing such a shameful thing. She really didn't expect that the clansmen wouldn't laugh at her, but instead criticize her for being bewitched by Mu Shanji. They seemed to be saying that she shouldn't have done that. Why did she do that? She saw it clearly this time. The clansmen's expressions were indeed embarrassed, but there were also many regrets. Your father was such a proud person. If he knew what you did in the underworld, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Chapter 5305. Tang Jian was very smart and good at managing the business. She was usually very polite and spoke well, so the clansmen actually liked her more. She was well-educated and well-versed in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She was seen as a role model for their daughters. Every time they taught their daughters, they would mention Tang Jian. Now that something like this had happened, no one could stay calm. They just couldn't understand how someone as smart as Tang Jian had fallen into Mu Shanji's hands. Tang Jian was also very confused. She was a well-behaved person. How could she do something like that? Mu Shanji's screams were still ringing in her ears. She was still struggling in her heart when she heard it. She couldn't bear to see him suffer. However, her rationality told her that the 2 of them had only themselves to blame for ending up like this. They had the chance to be together openly. Mu Shanji didn't have the courage, and she didn't mention it to him in a fit of pique. The 2 missed the chance. If one of them had been more persistent in the beginning, this wouldn't have happened. Thinking of this, Tang Jian regretted it. At this time, her mind was very clear. Even when she heard Mu Shanji's screams, she still wanted to stop it. But the rationality in her mind kept her from doing so. If she pleaded with her uncle at this time, there might be no kinship between them anymore. If her parents knew what she had done today, they would die with everlasting regret. If she could turn back time, she would definitely control herself and not think about Mu Shanji. Unfortunately, it was impossible to turn back time. It had already happened. Tang Jian fell to the ground powerlessly. She looked at the people around her blankly. At this time, there was no anger or grievance in her heart, only guilt and helplessness. She had learned so much when she was young. Why couldn't she control herself? No matter how much she liked someone, she shouldn't have done such a thing with him. Even if he was a man without a wife, she shouldn't have done such a thing with him. Thinking about what had happened recently, Tang Jian only felt that it was too absurd. It was really absurd. How could she do such a thing? Mu Shanji's screams stopped. Squire Tang's voice sounded. Give this letter to Mu Shanji and let him go. Mother Mu was already outside. How could she not know about such a big thing? In fact, she had long noticed that there was something unusual between Mu Shanji and Tang Jian. In her opinion, Mu Shanji's identity was not ordinary, and he might be the one to sit on that seat in the future. So, what was one more woman? Even if this woman was Tang Hui's cousin, as a person in that position, would he dare to say no to any woman he wanted? Mu Qiqi's mother did not expect things to turn out this way. Compared to Tang Jian, who was now fully awake and what she had done, Mu Shanji's mother felt that Mu Shanji had suffered a great grievance and bore this grudge in her heart. Ashan had a noble status, but this family actually dared to hit him 30 times without permission. Ashan, mother will take you away. This was the Tang family's territory, so Mrs. Mu didn't dare to say much. Ashan had yet to regain his identity, so she had to keep a low profile. Revenge was a dish best served cold. When Ashan regains his identity, just wait and see what will happen to the Tang family. In the future, if Ashan still liked this family's daughter, wouldn't they have to hand her over to him? Chapter 5306. Mother Mu's fierce glare was clearly seen by the members of the Tang clan. They were puzzled. What was Madame Mu thinking? Her son was disobedient after marrying into the family. He seduced Miss Tang and was rejected. Wasn't that what he deserved? Which ordinary family wouldn't think such a thing was shameful? Mrs. Mu's expression made it seem as if the Tang family had done something evil and shouldn't treat Mu Shanji like that. Now they understood. No wonder Mu Shanji was so ugly. It was obvious that if the upper beam was not straight, the lower beam would be crooked too. If the family was already like this, how good could the children they raised be? Mrs. Mu was full of anger. She angrily left with Mu Shanji. She didn't know that in the eyes of the Tang family members, they were a joke. They didn't want to see such a shameless mother and son in the future. They had misjudged Mu Shanji. They couldn't blame Squire Tang, who loved his daughter so much. The Tang family members looked at Squire Tang with pity. Then, they looked at Tang Jian, who was pale and regretful. They sighed deeply. This was a double blow to Counselor Tang. They knew that he had always treated Tang Jian like his own daughter. However, Tang Jian, who had lost her parents when she was young, was cautious. She always felt that she was a guest in the Squire mansion, living under someone else's roof. Therefore, she was very obedient. When she lost her parents, she was still half sensible. She couldn't really treat this place as her real home. Whenever Squire Tang mentioned this to the family members, he would look helpless. Now that this happened, Mu Shanji was easy to deal with, but Tang Jian was not. Uncle, I'm sorry. Jian failed to live up to your expectations. Squire Tang could see that Tang Jian was regretful. He only had one brother in his life. Tang Jian was his brother's flesh and blood. He couldn't bear to do anything to her. Calling the family meeting was the most ruthless thing he could do. He couldn't bear to do anything more. You know you're wrong? Squire Tang finally asked. Tang Jian knelt down and put her head on the floor. I know I'm wrong. Today's lesson is what I deserve. I failed to live up to Uncle's and the family's expectations. No matter what Uncle does, Jian won't resist. It's good that you know you're wrong. Squire Tang looked at his clansmen, who were all looking at him seriously. You can't hide the matter between you and Mu Shanji. People outside will know sooner or later. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to find him in the future. It is Jian who has wronged Uncle and the Tang sisters. Jian is willing to leave the Tang clan. From now on, I am no longer a member of the Tang clan. In order to compensate the Tang sisters, Jiyin is willing to share most of the clan's property with them. The clansmen were indeed resentful about this matter. Now that Tang Jiyin admitted her mistake so sincerely, he didn't know what to say. In fact, Tang Jiyin's departure from the Tang family had reduced the impact on the Tang family's daughter. She was even willing to compensate them, so they couldn't say anything more. When Tang Jiyin's father was still alive, he had helped the Tang family a lot. They all remembered it clearly. Yuan Qing, what do you think? Uncle Tang asked. He also thought this was the best way. Even if Tang Jiyin left the Tang clan, she couldn't cut off her bloodline with Squire Tang. She would still get what she deserved. This was equivalent to putting on a show, so as not to implicate the Tang family's daughter. Squire Tang naturally understood. Let's do it this way. The family property will be distributed under my name to the unmarried daughters in the clan. Uncle, this is the only thing I can do. You didn't do anything wrong. It's my fault. I'm willing to pay the price for my mistake. If my father was still alive, he would also agree with me. Although I have the ability to manage the family property, I have a bad heart and failed to live up to everyone's expectations. Okay. Squire Tang didn't force her. The house in the west is quiet, and there are few people. You can live there in the future. You can take whoever you want with you. Thank you, Uncle. Tang Jiyin moved to the house in the west. She didn't take Hong Yang and Qing Yang with her. She gave them enough money and let them go. The two of them cried with teary eyes, begging her not to. Tang Jiyin was a little hesitant at that time. It wasn't until Hong Yang's words that she made up her mind. Chapter 5307. Hong Yang said, Miss, even if the minister doesn't like you, you can't be disheartened. Yes, miss, the people of the Tang clan have gone too far. We won't have any contact with each other in the future. Miss, you are now independent and free. No one cares about you. Why do you want to drive us away? We are willing to serve you for the rest of our lives. Qing Yang said. The two sisters had been with Tang Jiyin since they were very young. Even if they received a lot of money, it was not as good as being with Tang Jiyin. The two of them felt that Tang Jiyin was disheartened because she was caught red-handed with Mu Shanji. That was why she drove them away. Perhaps after they left, Tang Jiyin might even become a nun. In their view, Tang Jiyin and Mu Shanji just missed each other at the beginning. They were in love with each other. Even if what happened later was a little embarrassing, they couldn't help it. Besides, feelings weren't something that could be controlled just because one wanted to. Miss, you drove us away. Do you want to cut off your relationship with young Master Mu? Now that both of you are free and in love with each other, why don't you find a place where no one knows you and start over? Now there is nothing between you and young Master Mu. When the two of them said those words just now, Tang Jiyin didn't want to keep them by her side. As soon as Hong Yang said this, she would not keep them by her side. Whether she and Mu Shanji had missed each other or they were in love with each other, something that shouldn't have happened had happened. She was fascinated by him and didn't see her own position clearly. She also forgot about etiquette, justice, integrity, and shame. She was confused once. How could she be confused a second time? If Qing Yang and Hong Yang continued to stay by her side, maybe one day when the two girls said something, she would involuntarily change her mind again. How should she put it? She did like Mu Shanji. But now that she was clear-headed, she couldn't understand why she did such a thing without a matchmaker. According to her previous character, even if she liked this person, she shouldn't have done such a thing. Now that everything had happened, she couldn't make mistakes again. Otherwise, she would really let her uncle down. In the future, she would live in this remote and quiet house. She would abstain from meat and pray to Buddha. She would forget about the feelings between her and Mu Shanji. She hoped that her repentance could let her parents in the underworld rest in peace. No matter how Qing Yang and Hong Yang begged, Tang Jiyin hardened her heart and did not intend to keep them. She even gave them more money to let them live a good life. With this large sum of money, they would not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of their lives. The two of you should go further away so that you won't be implicated by my reputation and be unable to find a good family. If you don't want to find someone, you can find a quiet place to settle down first. Qing Yang and Hong Yang knew Tang Jiyin's temperament very well. Finally, they stopped begging and left with their bags. In the house where Tang Jian lived, there was only a gatekeeper and an old maid who cleaned the courtyard. There was no one else. After the two of them left, she indeed lived a simple life. But she didn't know that after Hong Yang and Qing Yang left, they first went to see Mu Shanji. Mu Shanji and Mu Mu's mother left in a hurry. Mu Mu's mother was also a little arrogant. She didn't even bring back a change of clothes. When the two of them returned to the four walls of the thatched house, they couldn't get used to the moldy smell. Chapter 5308. It took them half a day to tidy up the place, and they were finally able to live in it. However, they had nothing on them, and their days were back to the beginning. Especially now that Mu Shanji had been beaten 30 times, he couldn't do any heavy work due to his injuries. Mu Shanji's mother wasn't in good health. She had been living like a princess in the family for the past 2 years. She couldn't adapt to living in this thatched hut. After only 2 or 3 days, she felt all kinds of discomfort. She could only force herself to take care of Mu Shanji. In the end, they sold the clothes they were wearing. At least they were silk and satin and could be sold for some money. Mu Shanji had a jade pendant on him, and he sold it as well. Mu Shanji's mother's hairpins, earrings, and bracelets were all sold. The money was not only used to buy medicine for Mu Shanji, but also to exchange for some necessities at home. Originally, they had been thrifty. With the things they had, they could live on for a few years. As the saying went, it was easy to go from simple to extravagant, but difficult to go back. Even Mu Shanji's mother was a little vague about the days when she was running for her life. She also began to spend extravagantly. Therefore, when Hong Yang and Qing Yang came over, they found that the two lived a good life. They came over because they felt that Tang Jian and Mu Shanji didn't have it easy. They could see that Tang Jian wouldn't keep them by her side. They planned to let Mu Shanji persuade her. As long as Tang Jian accepted Mu Shanji, it was only a matter of time before she accepted the two. In their opinion, Tang Jian liked Mu Shanji so much. How could she give him up so easily? Mu Shanji was the only one who could persuade her. When Minister Tang held the clan meeting, the two were just maids. Naturally, they didn't know what was going on inside. The two of them thought that Tang Jian had been humiliated by the people of the clan that day. Even the fact that Tang Jian had taken the initiative to compensate the sisters of the clan with more than half of her family assets was a decision made by the elders of the clan. They thought that they were just looking for an excuse to seize Tang Jian's family assets. In their eyes, Tang Jian had suffered a lot. Tang Jian didn't know that the two were thinking like that. She didn't say much to them because she felt that they were just like her in the past. It was as if they were blinded by something. If she kept them by her side, she might lose her mind one day. Seeing that they had served her for so many years, she gave them more money, hoping that they could live a comfortable life. Thank you for your concern. When Ashan recovers, we will go to Jian's place to take a look. In Mu Mu's mother's eyes, Mu Shan was of noble status. It was not strange that a girl like Tang Jian liked him. As long as Tang Jian was devoted to Mu Shanji, she would be destined to be a concubine in the future. Even if she couldn't be the empress with her status, she could be a concubine if Ashan liked her. Mrs. Mu was dreaming. As long as Mu Shanji and Tang Jian got married, they would not have to live as poor as before, and Tang. 2. They felt that Tang Jian couldn't forget Mu Shanji, so they took the initiative to treat him as their son-in-law and became maids. Mu Shanji and Mu Mu's mother were once again living a life of luxury, even though they were living in a thatched cottage. Under Qing Yang and Hong Yang's attentive care, Mu Shanji's injuries recovered quickly. Chapter 5309. During this period, Mu Shanji's mother didn't take out any money. Red Duck and Qing Duck paid for everything themselves. In order to serve Mu Shanji well, they spent half of the money that Tang Jian gave them. Mu Shanji's mother was used to being served, so she was used to it. She didn't treat herself as an outsider and didn't feel embarrassed at all. In her opinion, Tang Jian was Mu Shanji's woman. Shouldn't it be natural for her maids to serve the two of them? Tang Jian didn't know about this. She was reciting Buddhist scriptures behind closed doors. She really wanted to atone for her sins. She was ashamed of her mistakes. Tangwa knew about this. When she heard about it from the system, She was shocked. Host, Mu Shanji, and his mother went to see Tang Jian. With the system's reminder, Tang Guo wanted to join in the fun. So she ran outside with Hung Er. They ran all the way to the house in the west. Looking at the familiar road, Hung Er hesitated and asked, "Miss, are you going to see Miss Tang?" "Yes," Tang Guo answered. Hung Er didn't ask anymore. Fortunately, Miss didn't know anything. Otherwise, she wouldn't go to see Miss Tang so happily. Fortunately, Miss Tang had realized her mistakes and was repenting now. It was a good thing. Tang Guo walked very fast. It didn't take her long to get there. She arrived earlier than Mu Shanji and the others. The gatekeeper knew her. When he saw her, he greeted her warmly. After inviting her in, he closed the door and went to find Tang Jian. After a while, Tang Jian came out. At this time, Tang Jian was dressed very simply. Her expression was much calmer, and her arrogance and sharpness were gone. Seeing Tang Guo's little face again, Tang Jian only felt ashamed. Actually, she was thinking too much. She always felt that the minister's mansion was not her home. Why couldn't she remember how well her eldest uncle and elder cousin treated her? Why was it that when outsiders gossiped about her, she could not stand it? When she was young, she actually liked to play with her cousin. However, as she gradually grew older, she heard more and more gossips outside, so she played less and less with her cousin. In fact, her cousin liked to share all kinds of good things with her. It was just that she had low self-esteem and was sensitive. She always felt that she was living under someone else's roof, as if someone was showing off something. In reality, his cousin was like a 3-year-old child. Did she know what it meant to show off? She didn't understand. She only knew how to share the good things in her hands with the people she liked and was close to. Fortunately, she was close to her cousin. Unfortunately, she didn't cherish those times. She, who had lost her parents and was sensitive to gossip, was jealous that her cousin had a good father. "Cousin," Tang Jian greeted her. Just like when she was a child, she walked over and held Tang Guo's hand. Her eyes were red. Before Tang Guo could react, Tang Jian had dragged her to play. To Tang Guo's surprise, Tang Jian had prepared a lot of gadgets in one of her rooms. It seemed that they were all prepared for her. For a moment, she didn't know what to say, but she could clearly feel that Tang Jian regretted what had happened in the past. However, she was a fool now. She could only pretend that she didn't notice Tang Jian's behavior and played with those things happily. Suddenly, she looked up and found that Tang Jian's eyes were red. She was crying. "Why are you crying?" Tang Guo asked. "Did someone bully you?" Tang Jian quickly wiped her tears and shook her head. "No, no one dares to bully me." The matter from last time had been resolved, and the people of the clan were quite satisfied. As long as Tang Jian didn't make any mistakes, if there were any difficulties in the future, the clan would definitely help her. If she really got involved with Mu Shanji again, not to mention the clan, even the concierge would not forgive her. Wait a minute. Tang Jian thought of something and stopped the gatekeeper. "Please pass on a message to Mr. Mu. Let bygones be bygones. We can't make any more mistakes. In the future, we'll go our separate ways and don't entangle with each other anymore. Please don't come to me again. Tomorrow, I will announce to the public that I will never marry." The gatekeeper was shocked, but he didn't dare to say anything. He quickly agreed and went to respond to Mu Shanji. Chapter 53:11. Please inform them again. I really have something important to tell Jian. Mu Shanji did not give up. How could Jian do this? They were so loving and everything that should have happened had happened. Why did they have nothing to do with each other now? Now that they were both free, wouldn't it be good to find a place where no one knew them and be together again? The gatekeeper was unmoved. In the end, Tang Jian and the others went. Even if Qing Yang and Red Duck were a little regretful, they only felt that Tang Jian was temporarily cruel. They did not think that she would really ignore Mu Shanji forever. After so many years, the outside world knew about Tang Jian and Mu Shanji. Because the matter was handled in time, Tang Jian's attitude was very good. Even if someone talked about this matter, they were mostly talking about Mu Shanji being ungrateful. Those who talked about Tang Jian shook their heads and sighed. They said that a good young lady, who should have been the young madam of the Xie family, had ruined her life. The next day, Tang Jian released the news that she would never marry again. Everyone was a little surprised. Did she directly block her way out? Now that she was no longer in the Tang family, who would know what happened in the past if she lived in a different place? However, she chose such a path. People did not know what to say. Tang Jian continued to manage the remaining businesses. She no longer ate vegetarian and prayed to Buddha every time. When she went out, she would encounter a lot of strange looks. At first, she felt uncomfortable, but now she gradually got used to it. This was the kind of look she should bear. She had done something wrong, so this was the punishment. Even if she heard some women pointing at her and secretly talking about her, she ignored them. Since she had done it, others would definitely talk about it. She recruited people again. She did not want Red Duck and Qing Yang to come back. These two people no longer listened to her. Keeping them by her side would only cause her trouble. Since they liked to stay by Mu Shanji's side, they could stay there. She was kind enough to them. She had thought of a way out, but they did not listen. There was nothing she could do. Now, she only wanted to do one thing, which was to develop the business well and not embarrass the Tang family anymore. She wanted to protect her cousin and make up for her past mistakes. If she did all of these, she would have no regrets in this life and could go see her parents. During this period, Mu Shanji came to find Tang Jian, but he was stopped every time. Not to mention being alone with her, he didn't even have the chance to see her. Tang Jian told him several times across the palanquin that they would have nothing to do with each other from now on. She told him to forget about the past and start afresh. This would be good for both of them. Now, she didn't resent Mu Shanji too much. She was mainly responsible for this matter. It was because she didn't keep her bottom line that something unethical happened. After repeating this several times, Mu Shanji finally realized Tang Jian's determination. He also heard many people outside talking about how shameless he was and how he kept pestering her. She had already woken up, but he still kept pestering her. Was it because his family didn't have enough food to eat? So he came to ask Tang Jian for help? Finally, when he found Tang Jian for the last time, he couldn't help but say something. You finally feel embarrassed to be with me, and it affects you. Yes, I'm just a woodcutter. I have no money and no power. You're a lady anyway. Our identities don't match. Chapter 53:12. Because of me, you were removed from the Tang clan. I thought we could go through thick and thin together, but I didn't expect you to be the same as others. You are afraid that people will point fingers at you if you stay with me, right? Mu Shanji said a lot of things to the palanquin, but Tang Jian didn't respond. She didn't want to explain too much, so she waited for Mu Shanji to finish and asked people to take the palanquin away. Tang Jian, who was sitting in the sedan chair, was confused. In fact, Mu Shanji was not a banished immortal. Why was she so infatuated and desperate for him? Ru Chun, go and call some guards back. If Mr. Mu shows up again, stop him. Go back and prepare the luggage. We are going to Feng Shui County tomorrow. Ru Chun said, yes, Mississippi. Mu Shanji made a scene several times, and the whole Wuxian County knew that he kept pestering Tang Jian, so they didn't give Tang Jian as much advice. Many people mentioned Tang Jian and thought that she must have been blinded by the window paper. Tang Jian did not feel complacent because of this. Only she knew that the reason why she was with Mu Shanji was not only because she could not control her feelings for him, but also because of her jealousy, inferiority complex, and vengeance. She always felt that she was miserable. She lived under someone else's roof since she was a child, and she was jealous of her cousin, who was so pure. Now she thought that it was a joke. So she didn't blame Mu Shanji. She only blamed herself for thinking too much and not seeing things clearly. That was why she made such a mistake. Tangwa saw the change in Tang Jian. Unfortunately, the plot only mentioned that Tang Jian returned to the capital with Mu Shanji and was happy with him. What happened after that was not mentioned. Otherwise, with Tang Jian's current change, she was very curious whether Tang Jian would think of the governor's mansion of Wuxian County in the days to come. Would she be unable to sleep day and night? Would she choose to do something? She thought that it was possible for something like this to happen. Because people couldn't stay the same. Sometimes, when you suddenly understood something, there would be a big change. Now Tang Jian would ask someone to send her some toys every few days. As long as she went out once, she would bring it to her. But she never visited her in person. She had gone to look for Tang Jian once. After Minister Tang knew about it, he did not stop her. Later, he would ask someone to send some things to Tang Jian. Occasionally, she would hear Squire Tang mention Tang Jian. He would always sigh. He must have a lot of regrets about this matter. Even if it wasn't his fault, he would still blame himself for not taking good care of her, which led to such a thing happening. The next day, Tang Jian took a carriage to Fengshui County. She didn't plan to develop her main business in Wuxing County or Qingfeng County, so she chose Fengshui County, which was relatively close to Wuxing County. Now that the preliminary plan had been made and the shops had been taken over, all she had to do was to go over and see if there were any problems. If there were no problems, she would open for business. After yesterday, Mu Shanji did not plan to come to Tang Jian. Qing Yang and Hong Yang had spent almost all their money. Seeing that Tang Jian had no intention of changing her mind, they were a little anxious. When he heard that Mu Shanji had given up on the idea, he hurriedly tried to persuade him. Mu Shanji was annoyed by their words and even lost his temper. She looks down on me. She rarely receives guidance from others now. Her businesses are booming, and she's afraid that my existence will affect her. Chapter 53:13. Now, she is still the capable young miss, and I am just a woodcutter in the mountains. What happened back then made her lose face. How can she accept me? You don't have to persuade her. If you want to go back, you might as well go find her yourself. Qing Yang and Hong Yang's faces were ugly. The money that the young miss gave them was all spent, and Mu Shanji actually wanted them to go back by themselves. What was this? They stayed here and served the mother and son. Wasn't it because Mu Shanji had a chance to make the young miss bully them again? Now that the young miss had recovered and there were new people around her, their hope of going back was even slimmer. They had a premonition that unless the young miss could solve Mu Shanji's problem, they would never be able to go back. They had violated the young miss's taboo by staying here without permission. It was impossible for her to trust them again. Even if they went back with Mu Shanji in the future, they would not be able to serve the young miss like before. At this time, Mu Shanji had almost no hope of going back, which meant that they had no chance. Originally, they still had a large sum of money, which was enough for them to live comfortably. But recently, they had spent all their money on the mother and son of the Mu family. They had spent a lot of money. Mu Shanji's mother was not in good health, so they had not stopped using all kinds of supplements. The mother and son were good. They did not spend anything. They ate and drank for free for so long. Now that the young miss had not changed her mind about Mu Shanji, they might not have a chance. Thinking of this, the two panicked and did not know what to do for a moment. They weren't willing to continue staying here as maids. Previously, they thought that the young miss liked Mu Shanji, so they treated him as a son-in-law. Now that the young miss did not like him, why did they still rush to serve him? The mother and son's attitude was really rude. They treated them as servants. The more they thought about it, the angrier they became. They could not sleep in the middle of the night. Qing Yang, we can't go back to the young miss. Hong Yang's voice was sobbing. I really regret it. How could I think that this useless Mu Shanji could make the young miss change her mind? Then what should we do? We have spent almost all our money. If we want to leave, we might not even have enough money. If we left with the money and found a place to settle down, it would not be like this now. Hong Yang was angry. We served them and even gave them food and drinks. They think too highly of us. Qing Yang, I know where she hid her silver. Let's find a few opportunities to get it back, and then we'll leave. Is this okay? Qing Yang was a little hesitant. This is stealing. What do you mean steal? You're clearly taking back the money that we spent. It's ours in the first place. Chapter 53:14. Mu Mu's mother said, Shan, they are as blind as a bat. One day, all of them will regret it. Muumu's mother could not reveal Mu Shanji's identity, so she could only keep it to herself. She kept scolding Qingyang and Hongyang for being as blind as a bat. If these two served Ashan well, they would benefit a lot in the future. Unfortunately, these two were short-sighted maids and did not have the life to enjoy such a good life. They had not eaten lunch, so they were a little hungry. Qingyang and Hongyang had taken all the food in the kitchen away. Muumu's mother had to take the money and planned to go to the city with Mu Shanji to eat. When she went to take the money, she found that there was nothing in the place where the money was hidden. She immediately exclaimed, "It must be those two damned maids." Mu Shanji had read a lot of books and had a grudge in his heart. He immediately went to report it with his mother. The Yamen of Wuxian County was quite professional. After taking the case, they quickly went to search for Qingyang and Hongyang. How could they know that Mu Shanji and his mother would report it? They lived in the inn openly and did not hide their identities at all. They were quickly caught. They were caught red-handed and brought to the Yamen. They cried and made a scene for a long time. Since they were caught, they did not care about losing face. They told the Yamen about how they spent all their savings during this period, making everyone lose face. However, this was not the reason for them to steal the money. In the end, they returned all the money they had and had to accept other punishments. When they got out of the Yamen, they were penniless again. In the end, they decided to go to the minister's mansion to ask for help. Although Minister Tang was a kind person, he was not someone who could not distinguish right from wrong. How could he keep these two disobedient maids? From the actions of these two maids, he could see that they had tried to matchmake Tang Jian and Mu Shanji. Drive them away. Drive them away as many times as they come. Minister Tang waved his hand and decided the fate of the two. They were penniless and did not even have the copper coins to buy steamed buns. In the end, they could only go on the road of selling themselves as maids. Being a maidservant this time was not as easy as being by Tang Jian's side. She did not know how many years it would take for her to regain her freedom. She might spend the rest of her life here and never be able to make a name for herself. They regretted that they didn't leave with the money. Why did they think that Mu Shanji could make Miss accept them again? But no matter how much they regretted it, it was useless. Tangwa knew all this, but she didn't ask. Recently, she received news from Elder Bai that the Emperor trusted him very much. After showing his abilities a few times, the Emperor gave him the position of state preceptor. Now that he was at the Emperor's side, he was second only to the Emperor and above tens of thousands of people. He was free and unfettered, with all kinds of fun and beautiful things in his hands. It meant that he would have a beautiful fairy island if he worked here for 10 years or so. In the letter, Elder Bai said, "Fortunately, I listened to my master's suggestion and came to the Emperor's side to be the state preceptor. There are indeed many benefits." In addition, Elder Bai also mentioned that he had found a treasure boy in the palace. He was a prince who was not favored by the Emperor. According to Elder Bai, if the Empress was really the one who had arranged to kill the Tang family, he would let this treasure boy catch the Emperor's eye and push him to the throne after the Empress and imperial concubine Xie finished their fight. In private, he was already taking care of this boy. If the Empress was not the one who arranged the killers, this boy would have a good future. He could go out of the palace and be a free and unfettered prince. Chapter 53:15. She moved to the island with him and collected all kinds of precious things for him. It could be considered as making good use of waste. After reading this, Tangwa didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was very curious about what Brother Qishao did when he made the paper puppets. Were the paper puppets nowadays so good at enjoying themselves and scheming? They were more like humans than real humans. Elder Bai's actions were very much in line with her wishes. She simply replied to the letter and tied it to a puppet pigeon, letting it send the letter to the capital. In addition, Elder Bai also mentioned the situation of the Xie family in the capital in the letter. Recently, the Xie family had been in a lot of trouble. First, the matter of a junior of the Xie family beating someone to death was revealed. It was because the family of the deceased suddenly had a promising family member who wanted to redress the injustice for his family. The evidence was conclusive and the Empress secretly intervened. This junior of the Xie family was imprisoned in the prison. It was said that he was likely to be beheaded, even with imperial consort Xie's help. With Elder Bai's help, the emperor's body was strong and his mind was much clearer. Occasionally, Elder Bai would mischievously remind the emperor of imperial consort Xie and the empress's intentions. As a result, the emperor was not bewitched by the two of them at all. He was just pretending to play with the two of them. Tanguo felt that if Elder Bai was born in the palace, few people would be able to beat him, right? An old man was quite good at it. A few days later, when Tanguo went out to play, she saw people moving things to and fro on the opposite side of the road. She curiously followed them to take a look. After walking for about 100 meters on the path, she found that those people were moving things into the deserted house on the opposite side of the road that had been empty for a long time. She walked over to take a look and found that these people were tidying up the house and weeding the house. It seemed that this place was going to be occupied, and the owner was repairing the house. This house was quite big. Han muttered in a low voice, "I don't know who moved in. I should go back and tell the minister about this. After all, it's so close to the minister's residence. They will be neighbors in the future." Tanguo didn't know who it was and just glanced at it for a while before ignoring it. In the afternoon, Han told Minister Tang about this matter. Squire Tang immediately sent someone to inquire about it, but the owner didn't show up. Those who did the work were hired workers, so they didn't know the owner's name. A few days later, someone from the minister's mansion came to visit. Squire Tang was a little surprised to see the person who had just arrived. In fact, it was the Tang family who had let the Xie family down. Seeing that Xie was here, she hurriedly greeted him. "Why is young Master Xie here?" "I'm supervising the renovation of the courtyard and checking if there are any good places in the surroundings so that I can come out and walk around in the future. Unknowingly, I ended up here." Han nodded lightly and said that she wanted to play kite with Tanguo. Xie suddenly smiled. "I haven't flown a kite in a long time. In the past, my health wasn't good, so I could only watch others do it. 4 Seasons, go and buy a few kites for me." Of course, 4 Seasons hurriedly ran over. Young Master was missing too many things. Now that he had the chance, he had to make up for it. He bought a few more kites and got everyone to play with young Master Xie. Chapter 53:17. Sure enough, the 4 Seasons bought all kinds of kites. Xierong's smile widened when he saw this. He asked the 4 Seasons to take the kites and found an empty space not far from where Tanguo was. Tanguo and Han only needed to turn their heads to see what Xierong was doing. Then, Xierong flew the kites into the sky one by one. After a while, he had many strings in his hands. The kites flew very high, surpassing the height of Tanguo's kites. Xierong thought that he should be able to attract Tanguo's attention by doing this. Tanguo felt that Xierong was working so hard. If she didn't pay attention to him, she would be letting him down. Therefore, her attention was completely attracted by Xierong's kites. Han sat at the side and was also stunned. When she saw the 4 Seasons beside her, she whispered, "Your young master is really amazing. I've been flying kites with Miss for so long, but I've never seen anything like this. Young master has been weak and sick since he was young. He has to be careful when he goes out, let alone fly kites." It was rare for the 4 Seasons to have someone to chat with, so he said, "Now that he's recovered, he probably wants to make up for what he missed out on. Besides, my young master is smart. How can flying a kite be difficult for him? Even if it's flying a kite, he's the best at it." While the two of them were talking, Xierong had already pulled the kite and slowly moved to Tanguo's position. He had already moved to her side. When he saw Tanguo looking at him, he smiled at her. He knew that Tanguo was a little different from ordinary people, so he didn't know how to greet her. However, he had created such an opportunity with great difficulty. How could he let it go? Even if it was an awkward conversation, he had to say a few words to Tanguo, right? "Are you here to fly a kite too?" Tanguo paused and nodded. "I'm flying a kite. Actually, it's better to fly a few more kites." After Xierong said that, he pointed at the kite string in his hand that was innumerable at a glance. Then, he pointed at the kites floating in the sky. They were floating in different positions without any intention of tying a knot. Tangwa looked up and pretended to be envious. "It's beautiful. Do you like it very much?" Sierong asked. "Tangwa, I like it. Then I'll lend it to you." Sierong handed the kite string in his hand to Tangwa. Afraid that she wouldn't take it, he added, "Try it." After saying that, he realized that Tangwa was different from ordinary people, so he really didn't know what her reaction would be. Tangwa threw away the kite string in her hand and took the kite string from Sierong's hand. Before he could react, she ran away with the kite string. Because of her running, the kite's position also changed slightly. Sierong was focused on catching Tangwa's kite. When he caught it, he realized that Tangwa had been running with the kite string for a while. She kept retracting the string, as if she wanted to pull all the kites in the sky back. However, he had placed it too high, and it was not that easy to retrieve it. He took the kite and quickly walked over. "Do you want them back?" Sierong really didn't know how to strike up a conversation with her. His usual intelligence couldn't be used in front of her at all. He could only use the original method and say some very clumsy words. "Yeah," Tangwa answered.
"Retract them."
Sierong didn't ask why. In his opinion, there shouldn't be a reason in her world. She just wanted to do it. Chapter 53:18. Since he chose to come here, he was mentally prepared. Sierong reached out for the kite string. "I'll help you collect them, okay?" Tangwa looked at Sierong and returned the string to him. Before Sierong received the string, he was still smiling, but after receiving it, his smile froze. Because for some reason, the kite strings were all knotted. Not only were there knots at the bottom, but there were also knots at the top. He looked up at the kites for a long time and felt dizzy looking at the knots. Then, his gaze landed on Tangwa. He was puzzled. How did she do it? Tangwa looked at Sierong with a serious expression, as if she was looking forward to him collecting all the kites. Sierong felt confident again. He silently collected the kites. Although it was very laborious, he was confident that he would be able to collect all the kites. Han and Four Seasons chatted for a while before going to look for the masters. In the end, they found Tangwa and Sierong standing together. The two hurried over and found Sierong collecting a bunch of kites that were tied into pairs. Han looked at Four Seasons. Four Seasons' mouth twitched as if saying, "Didn't you say that your master was the best at flying kites? Why is he flying so many kites now? They even got knots?" Four Seasons was speechless. He didn't know either. He felt that this should be an accident. Young Master was usually very confident in everything he did. Han didn't believe it. She stood beside Tangwa. "Miss, are you tired? Do you still want to play kites?" "Yes." Han then realized that Tangwa's eyes were on Sierong's kites. Miss must think that it was very interesting, so she waited patiently at the side. "The kites can't come down?" Tangwa realized that the wind was very beautiful. It blew the kites to a big tree, and some of the strings even got caught in the tree. It wouldn't be easy for Sierong to get all the kites down. That was why Tangwa asked earlier. Sierong's forehead was dripping with sweat. It wasn't like Four Seasons bought any kites. It was easy to go up, but hard to come down. The strings got knotted too easily. "For Seasons, he can come down." Tangwa simply squatted at the side and cupped her face as she looked at the kite in the sky. She looked extremely serious, which made Sierong even more motivated. Unknowingly, several hours had passed, and Sierong finally brought the kite down. Seeing how tired he was, Tangwa shared half of her snacks with him. When Sierong received the snacks, he felt that he wasn't tired at all after working for a few hours just to get the kite down. For Seasons felt that young master was missing too much. It was just a few kites and he cared so much about them. Honor felt that this young master of the Xie family was really strange. In order to get a few kites down, he had worked so hard for so long. There was most likely something wrong with him. After the first encounter, there would be many subsequent encounters. No matter where Tangwa went to play, she would meet Sierong every once in a while. This time, Sierong even brought some food for Tangwa to eat. At first, Han was a bit wary. Later, she was sure that there was something wrong with this young Master Xie. Thus, she did not pay much attention to him and focused on serving her young Mississippi. Because Sierong would occasionally act strangely, Han, or felt that there was something wrong with him. Little did she know that these actions were all influenced by Tanghua. Chapter 53:19. It was the season for bamboo shoots to appear again. Sierong and old Madame Xie had already moved into the house not far from the minister's mansion. Ever since he moved in, Sierong would meet Tanghua almost every day. Occasionally, he would use the excuse of looking for Minister Tang. In fact, it was because Tanghua didn't go out, and he wanted to see what was going on. The first person to discover Sierong's true purpose was Tang Jian. Ever since that incident, she had also come to the minister's mansion, but not many times. She would occasionally come to see Tanghua, and inevitably, she would meet Sierong. After meeting him a few more times, she couldn't help but pay attention. She wondered why this person was always hanging around her cousin. After asking someone to investigate, she understood that Sierong might be thinking that way. If it was in the past, she might have gone to find Sierong and told him to behave himself. But now, she was no longer the same person. After observing, she found that Sierong was extraordinarily patient with Tanghua. Several times, she heard from the people around her that Tanghua often hung the kite on the tree, and it was Sierong who went to pick it up. The snacks that Sierong brought every time were Tanghua's favorite. He knew exactly what she liked. As the news came back, Tang Jian became a little silent. She couldn't help but think of her relationship with Mu Shanji. Now that she thought about it carefully, even if there were no obstacles between her and Mu Shanji, and they could be together openly, everything in the future might not be as beautiful as she thought. Tang Jian didn't go to see Sierong, nor did she ask someone to keep an eye on Sierong. Whether a person had a heart or not, it was enough to see what he or she did. Tang Jian became busy again. Every time she went to Feng Shui County, it would take half a month. After half a month, she had to turn back. It only took half a day's journey from Wuxing County to Feng Shui County. Tang Jian set off at noon this time and would arrive in the evening. In 2 days, it would be Minister Tang's birthday. If it weren't for this reason, she wouldn't have rushed back. However, the weather was not good today. Halfway through the journey, it started to rain heavily. The rain was too heavy to continue their journey. They could only find a place to temporarily take shelter from the rain. Fortunately, there was a dilapidated temple nearby. Tang Jian and the people around her hurriedly ran to the temple. "Miss, it looks like the rain outside won't stop anytime soon." Tang Jian also saw it. "We can't walk like this. The rain is too heavy. The things we brought will all be ruined. Let's wait for Yuding first. It's impossible for the rain to continue for so many days. Maybe it will stop tomorrow." Seeing that Tang Jian was not in a hurry, the subordinates were not in a hurry either. They hurried to dry their clothes. Chapter 53:20. Fortunately, these people only glanced at them and didn't seem to care much. It seemed that they didn't want to talk to them. They sat at the door and seemed to be waiting for the rain to stop before leaving. The sky gradually darkened. Tang Jian's people gradually fell asleep. One of them took turns to stay awake. In the middle of the night, Tang Jian woke up and found that the rain outside had stopped. She looked at the servant girl beside her whose eyes were red and patted her gently. "Sleep for a while." "Miss, I'm not sleepy." "How can you not be sleepy? Your eyes are red. Go to sleep." Tang Jian looked at the ruined temple. "Those people have left. I'll go out and see if the rain has stopped. It will be dawn in a few hours. If it doesn't rain, we can leave at dawn." Tang Jian had already stood up. The servant girl saw that she couldn't refuse, so she leaned on the side and fell asleep. She was really sleepy. Tang Jian walked out slowly. Just as she reached the door of the ruined temple, she heard movement outside and subconsciously stopped. The rain finally stopped. It would be bad if this rain delayed Master's important matter. "Don't talk nonsense. Let's go. If Imperial Consort Xie's people arrive at the family Tang first, you and I won't be able to bear the consequences when Master interrogates us." "Boss, don't worry. With Master's people obstructing, Imperial Consort Xie's people will never reach the family Tang. Even if they arrive, they will only see the corpses of the whole family. Tang Jian almost exclaimed. She quickly bit her finger and didn't dare to breathe. She stood still at the door, afraid that a small movement would attract the attention of the people outside. If she was discovered by the people outside at this time, she and her subordinates would definitely not be able to escape. Even if it was hard for her to stand, she didn't move. Her legs were numb and sore. She bit her finger hard and didn't make a sound. She was really afraid that the people outside would return. If that happened, they would lose their lives. Perhaps God heard her inner voice. The group of people spurred their horses away and didn't look back. Tang Jian still didn't dare to move. After a while, she was sure that there was no movement outside. Then she breathed a sigh of relief. However, before she could finish heaving a sigh of relief, she remembered the conversation between the group of people. Family Tang? The biggest family in Wuxin County was the Tang family. Which family was this Tang family? The more she thought about it, the more uneasy she felt. Right, those people mentioned Imperial Consort Xie. Who was Imperial Consort Xie? Wasn't he from the Xie family's direct line of descent? According to the other party's words, Imperial Consort Xie would arrange for someone to come to the family Tang. Who was the master of those people? Which family was it that wanted to wipe out the entire family Tang? Tang Jian knocked her head hard. She was still panicking. Could it be because of her uncle's family Tang? All of you, wake up! Tang Jian shouted to the people sleeping behind her. I'm going back to Wuxin County as soon as possible. 2 of you follow me on the horse and take a shortcut. The rest of you will come back by the main road at dawn. No matter which family Tang it was, she couldn't sit here in peace. She had to go back and find her uncle first so that he could be prepared. It would be best if he called for a clan meeting. The family Tang in Wuxin County was related to her by blood. The people who were woken up were all confused, but they all listened to Tang Jian. 2 strong men quickly stood up and followed Tang Jian on the horse and took a shortcut. Chapter 53:21. Miss, although the path is short, it's not easy to walk on. It's uneven and full of thorns. You have to be careful. I know. Tang Jian's expression was serious, but this path can save a lot of time. It would take 4 hours to go back from here by the main road, but only about 2 hours by the small path. However, this path had not been used for a long time. It was indeed difficult. Even with 2 guards clearing the way, Tang Jian's body and face were scratched by the grass. Encountering an uneven road, she even tripped and fell, scaring the 2 guards. They had never seen Tang Jian like this in the middle of the night. Ignoring the mud on her body, she quickly got up from the ground and jumped on the horse. Miss, if you need anything, you can tell us to go back and do it. I have to go back personally. If I don't go back personally, I'll be worried. I'm afraid that you won't be able to explain clearly and get their attention. She was panicking. She didn't know why, but if she didn't go back in time, something that she would regret for the rest of her life would happen. About 2 hours later, Tang Jian appeared at the minister's mansion. She knocked hard on the door. After a long while, the gatekeeper opened the door. When he saw the 3 people standing outside, he was shocked. Even if you want to beg for food, you don't have to come so early. There's still 2 hours before dawn. It's me. I'm not here to beg for food. I want to see Uncle. Let me in. It's urgent. As soon as Tang Jian spoke, the gatekeeper heard her and hurriedly shone the lantern on her. This time, they could see her body more clearly. Her face was full of scratches, and the dress she was wearing was also scraped and covered in mud. The gatekeeper knew that something must have happened. He quickly said, Miss, come in quickly. I'll inform the minister immediately. When Minister Tang saw Tang Jian, he was also shocked. He immediately exclaimed, Jian, what's wrong with you? Who did this? Even if Tang Jian was removed as the head of the Tang family, anyone with a discerning eye could see that the relationship between them couldn't be broken. Who had the guts to bully Tang Jian right under their noses? Uncle, no one bullied me. I heard something and felt it was unusual, so I rushed here in the middle of the night. Tang Jian told Squire Tang what she heard at the entrance of the temple. In fact, the system had woken up Tang Gua the moment Tang Jian appeared. She was also shocked. When she heard what Tang Jian said, she knew that someone had come to kill Mu Shanji. However, Mu Shanji had been divorced and was no longer living in the family Tang. Why would he come straight to the family Tang? She thought about the reason. It was most likely because the news in ancient times was outdated. When Mu Shanji got married, Mother Mu should have sent the news to imperial concubine Xie. Mother Mu could not have told him everything that happened after that. There might have been a traitor on imperial consort Xie's side who leaked the news. In the end, the mastermind took the delayed news and arranged for people to kill their way to the minister's mansion. After hearing Tang Jian's words, Minister Tang was also shocked. Those people must be very scary to be able to make Tang Jian so embarrassed. He paced back and forth on the spot, not knowing what to do. It was late at night. He couldn't gather all the people in the clan. Suddenly, Minister Tang thought of the people living across the street. His eyes lit up. He heard that Xierong had a group of skilled guards. Should he recruit them? At the same time, he arranged for people to knock on the doors of the houses. When there was time, he asked them to quickly hide in the minister's mansion. Chapter 53:22. Without further delay, Squire Tang led his men to the house opposite to look for Xierong. When Xierong heard the purpose of their visit, he immediately gathered all his men and arranged for them to knock on the door of the Tang clan in Wuxing County and inform them of the matter. For safety's sake, why don't we let everyone hide in my house? What do you think, Squire Tang? Squire Tang thought it was better. At this moment, he didn't say anything embarrassing. The most important thing was to get out of trouble first. He didn't know which family the Tang family was targeted by that group of people. They must be from a big family to be valued by the other party. Seeing that Squire Tang had agreed, Xierong began to give his orders unhurriedly. Then, he glanced at Squire Tang's group. Other than Squire Tang and his two attendants, there was only Tang Jian and the other two who looked very embarrassed. He knew that Tang Jian had changed a little, but he didn't expect her to change so much. Of course, he didn't care much about it. CG, take 2 men with you and bring all the people in Squire Tang's house here. I don't know when they will come, so Squire Tang doesn't need to go there for the time being. As for Miss Guo, let CG take some men with him. In front of so many people, he couldn't express his thoughts too clearly, lest Squire Tang became vigilant. He had to let Tang Guo rely on him first. If Squire Tang knew, he wouldn't have so many chances to get along with her later. It was absolutely right to let CG, his confidant, go to pick them up. Tang Jian couldn't help but take a few more glances at Xierong. Seeing how serious he was, as if this was a very normal thing, a smile appeared on her embarrassed face. It seemed that Xierong really liked her cousin. She hoped that he was sincere and wouldn't let her down when they got together in the future. Otherwise, she wouldn't let him go. Xierong was a little confused. He felt that Tang Jian's eyes were a little strange, but he didn't think much about it and started to get busy. Xierong's subordinates moved quickly. In less than an hour, they had brought all the Tang clan members to the Xie family. They were still a little skeptical. After all, their Tang family was considered a big family in Wuxing County. They had never done anything immoral and got along very well with the other families in Wuxing County. Even if there were some small conflicts, it wouldn't be to the extent of taking someone's life, right? However, when they came here and saw Tang Jian's appearance, they believed her at first. After hearing what she said, they were a little scared. Could it be that the Tang family had really accidentally offended the nobles in the capital? Those people mentioned Imperial Consort Xie, and their master should be someone with a similar status as Imperial Consort Xie, right? At this moment, Xierong and old Madame Xie were a little surprised. Squire Tang didn't mention Imperial Concubine Xie just now. When they heard it now, they were also very surprised. Why was Imperial Consort Xie involved in this? No matter what, this Imperial Concubine Xie still had some ties with them. Minister Tang, why is Imperial Consort Xie involved in this? Xierong asked directly. He didn't want to talk to Tang Jian, so he asked Minister Tang. Of course, the person who answered was Tang Jian. Those people said that if this matter isn't resolved soon, Imperial Concubine Xie's people will come. They said that when Imperial Concubine Xie's people arrive, they will see a house full of corpses. Tang Jian repeated what she said before. That's all I heard. It seemed that they all believed that this was the reason. Then take a look. Whose child isn't their own? Squire Tang coughed softly. It's safer to find her. If that's the case, we'll wait for Imperial Concubine Xie's people to come and pick her up. My son is my biological son. The children in my family are also my biological children. Don't doubt me. She's my biological daughter. I definitely didn't pick her up. I can guarantee that it's not my house. The people of the clan began to prove their innocence one by one, expressing that they would never raise a child. Squire Tang glanced at them. It seemed that they really didn't pick up the child. The people of the clan were very silent. For the time being, they couldn't think of any other reason. They could only wait in the Xie family. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.